Hi, everybody. Welcome to another session of Come Cloud with us. We have a very special session today, Come Cloud with Power Platform. I'm your host. My name is Abdul Kazi, and I have my co-host, Chris Gale. Hey, Chris, how's it going?
Great, thank you, Abdul. How about you?
Good. Very good. Thanks so much.
Yeah.
So we have a great session for you today. So with that being said, we'll get into the introductions. So we'll start with Natalie.
Sure. Hey guys, thank you so much for having me. It's awesome being able to join this. My name's Natalie. I'm from the Netherlands. I'm a Power Platform developer, and yeah, that's me. I'm a Microsoft Business Applications MVP. I have just been awarded June 1st, so quite recently, and I've only done the Power Platform for 2 years, so it's been awesome.
Thank you so much, Natalie. Next up is Geeta.
Yeah, this is Geeta. I am based out of Dallas, Texas. I'm a solutions architect with a Microsoft partner based out of Dallas, Power Addict, enthusiast of all things Office 365, Azure, and also a business applications MVP, and also run the Dallas Fort Worth Power Platform user group. I'm excited to be sharing the space with all these brilliant women here, and thanks to Abdul and Chris for having us.
You're welcome. Thanks for being here. Okay, next up is Heidi.
Hello, Heidi Jordan. I am out of Sioux Falls, South Dakota, and I am a senior modern workplace consultant with Avanade. And I was also recently awarded a BizApps MVP in January. So it's a relatively new journey for me too. I'm so excited to be here. My tagline is Power Platform, or sorry, SharePoint girl living in a Power Platform world. So it's really been a transformation for me, but it's so fun to be with all you. And fun fact is I started doing speaking events and community calls after I saw Rachel on one of the community calls. So it's really cool to be with her, here with her today. So thanks again for having me, guys.
That's awesome. Thanks so much, Heidi. Next up is M.
Hey, thanks guys for having me. I really appreciate it. My name is M. Darcy. I use she or they pronouns. If you don't know what that means, feel free to ask me, and I'm more than happy to explain what that is. I am the director of low-code technology. I think I have the coolest job title that I've ever asked for in my entire career, working for a partner, Hitachi Solutions, also a triple awarded Microsoft MVP as well. I do all things Power Platform. I sell Power Platform. I talk Power Platform all day. And I am based in Philadelphia with my 3 cats, which inevitably will appear on the screen at any given stage. Thanks, guys.
Thanks, M. Next up is Foyan.
Hi everyone, my name is Foyin Olajide Bello. I'm based out of Dublin in Ireland. I'm a business applications MVP, also a solutions architect with Avanade, and I'm happy to be here with meeting all these wonderful ladies. And thank you so much, Chris and Abdul, for having me.
Our pleasure. And last, not the least, but Rishona.
Hi everyone, I'm Rashona. I'm based in Sydney and I work as a Power Platform trainer and evangelist at a Microsoft partner called Barhead Solutions. So excited to be here with all of the ladies here today.
Thanks so much for the introduction. So before we actually get into the real discussion of Power Platform, let's talk about any conferences you folks have attended. I know a couple of you folks have attended a couple of conferences. So maybe talk about your experience, like Dynamic Con or MS Build or Microsoft 365.
Abdul, I
So,
think before you do that, I'd like to actually
Yeah,
hear from Rachel. That would be
oh,
awesome.
sorry. Oh, sorry.
Gotta give
I missed
Rachel.
Rachel. Sorry, Rachel. I missed you there.
Sure, no problem. Thank you very much. Okay, hi, my name is Rachel Rabo. I'm actually based in Malta and I'm working at KPMG MBS as a Dynamics 365 CRM developer. So, thank you.
Sorry, Rachel.
Yeah, sure, it's fine.
Okay,
So
let's talk about,
conferences.
yeah.
yeah.
I'm gonna kick off. So the one I was recently at was Dynamics Con. I know a few of us here were at that as well. So I was pretty excited about that because it was the first in-person Microsoft conference I've been able to go to. So that one was based out in Arizona. and I was delivering a presentation. I had two actually. One was on Teams and Power Platform, and the other one was on Power Virtual Agents and all the cool features that cool new stuff you can do with that too.
That is super cool, Shona. I had you on my list of things to go to, but it conflicted with this stupid customer.
Oh, that's
call,
a shame. Yeah, you know what?
unfortunately.
They put so many good sessions that were conflicting with each other. I understand.
Yes, I was also at DynamicsCon, which is really cool. I got to do a very fun session on my favorite topic of all time, which is governance for the Power Platform. It is a very unsexy topic, but I think I managed to make it pretty fun and pretty interesting. I do my best, but important topic nonetheless.
I was there. I enjoyed it.
Oh, thanks.
Great. So I guess I'll go next. We currently have the European Power Platform Conference going on here in Dublin. And day one was a tutorial. Today is the first day of the full conference. And it's really been like amazing. So many insights being shared by various MVPs and speakers. We also had a Ask Me Anything session with Microsoft this evening. So that was good. I had a session today with Heather, most of you know her, and Sarah. And it was more around our stories, the community, and how people can get started in their Power Platform journey. So I'm sure that we're going to talk a lot about that today. And then I have a session tomorrow about governance. So
That
I
is
hope I
so
make mine as
cool.
interesting as yours.
Oh, I have no doubt. I think you're phenomenal at what you do, Foyen. It's really, really great to hear your story and what you've done. Interestingly enough, Dublin, they had my first ever user group was in Dublin. It was actually before I even lived there. I was living in the States at the time, and it's when I met Chris Huntingford, which most of you guys know. If you see him at EPPC, which I think he's there, avoid him at all costs. That man is trouble. But
Well, I am actually co-hosting a session with him in Vegas, so
I'll pray
wish
for
me
you.
luck.
I will pray. Chris Huntingford and I in Vegas is a sight to behold. I'm warning you guys now. But I met him in Dublin at the Dynamics user group or whatever it was called back in the day in 2016, I think it was. And he was my entry point into the Microsoft community. So can't stress enough,
Okay.
these events are so important for networking.
Yeah, they are. I met my entry point into the community, which is Keith Walton. So
Oh
he was
yeah.
like, yes, when we started up the user group, I didn't have an idea of how to organize a meetup. What do you talk about? What's the agenda like? And Keith was like, come on, I'll help you. I'll show you. And then he literally walked me through, gave me his slide deck to edit and start our first meeting. And then he joined us virtually. And then I'm meeting him for the first time in this conference 4 years
Really?
after. Yes.
That is
Yes,
so
my
cool.
first time.
He's one of my favorite human beings on this planet is Mr. Keith Watling, for sure. He's fantastic.
He is. So, I mean, conferences are a great place to connect with the community. Yeah.
And
I
then actually we have three speakers who are attending the Power Platform conference. So I know Geeta, Heidi, and then Natalie. All three are going to be speakers. So that's amazing.
Yeah, so I actually I visited the Power Platform conference this past September. I'd never done a conference before. I had no clue what to expect. And I was so in awe of the community and all of the MVPs and Microsoft people and everybody that was there. And from there, Hugo Bernier actually helped me out, and he introduced me with the community and what sessions were, what a user group is, how everything basically works. So he's the person that after that introduced me. But at that conference, I just took a chance and I saw an empty seat next to him. I was like, well, I can sit there. I can talk to him and I can reach out. And that's what I love about conferences and the community and meeting people. I mean, we are all people. We're all out there to have fun and share our passion. And that's what I love the most about conferences, and especially going back this year and speaking and meeting Heidi and meeting Geeta in person. That's just awesome.
Yeah, I totally echo what Natalie is saying. The one last year, I think, was the first in-person conference after a very long time, and it was a lot of people, right? I'm not used to seeing that, but then you get into the conference and you're like, oh, this hall full of people, and it was exciting to match the names to the faces, because a lot of them with this community, you just get to see them on social media. You don't, you kind of build that network, that friendship, beyond borders and oceans. But then the conferences are a way to, catch up and actually put the name to the face, and instead of having to see them in those little tiny profiles there. Definitely looking forward to the conference this year, the Microsoft Power Platform Conference in Vegas, and can't wait to hang out with the rest of the crew there.
I'll jump in here about the Vegas conference too. I don't know if everyone saw the announcement that the keynote is going to be in the arena, which is where they hold like the CMA Music Awards and the boxing and everything. So it's going to be a massive event. So I'm very excited to see how that pans out. And then side note, this will probably be my 26th trip to Vegas. So if you have any questions on Vegas and dining, anything, please hit me up, because it is a place I love to travel to. So I'm very excited for this one.
So that's your second home. We take it then.
Do you
All
have
right,
like
I'm
a
adding
customer out
Heidi to
there?
my speed dial there. Here she
Yes.
is.
Yes. Sorry, Emma, I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, I was gonna say that was the same for me last summer. I had a customer out there, so I feel you.
Nice. Okay. So, I guess let's start with the discussion here. So, we're here to talk about Power Platform. So, anybody who's listening, talk to us about what does Power Platform means. I know there is quite a bit of hype recently. Everybody is really talking about Power Platform. So, first thing first, what exactly is Power Platform, and um, is it a hype, or is it really a, a thing out there? So anybody can jump in.
Okay, I think I can jump in here. Power Platform for me is actually amazing. I'm still learning a lot on it. Like, I'm getting a lot of news about it on Copilot, Generative AI. I'm still trying to get my hands on that. But the few things I know is that Power Platform is absolutely amazing. Like, for me, I got the opportunity to be able to build applications. And also, when I started, I got into tech. Power Platform was like, the hype is amazing. It's all about what it's about, because I got the opportunity to build applications when I did not know about tech. I got the opportunity to build applications, solve problems. So you get, whether you're a developer or a non-developer, it's a big home for you to come in, like to build solutions. Like, you don't have to think so much about, okay, since it's Power Platform, I have to build applications or solve business problem for a very big organization. So you can also solve problems on your own personal levels. Maybe you want to automate things for yourself, you want to automate your emails, and also get attachments, stuff like that. Thank you.
Yeah, I can also add on to that. So for me, the Power Platform, it's so accessible for somebody with no experience in coding and no experience in IT even, that you can open up a Canvas app, you can open up a Power Automate flow, and it kind of speaks for itself. And there's a lot of learning material out there. But I came from I don't have a degree, I don't have a coding background, I don't really have any education in this. So going from that, from basically nothing, to opening up a Power App and figuring out what a gallery is, and hey, how do I do a Power Automate flow, and how does this work? I mean, with this Power FX code, with this low code, no code, it's so easy to actually get something started and work on it. So for me, that's the biggest strength of the Power Platform, is that it's low code, and it's easy enough to learn for everybody.
Yeah, I agree with that. And I think it's actually really important to address why Power Platform is such an important part of the business landscape when it comes to toolkits. I obviously do like a lot of selling about the Power Platform, but I also have to do a lot of education as to why it's so important to a business. And the key reality is that a lot of businesses don't have the tech resources available to create solutions that business users are asking for. And what happens is, when that's not a possibility, your business users will either going out and downloading trials of things, or putting stuff in Excel, or maybe even using something like Smartsheets, which is fine, any of those kinds of different tools. The reason why the Power Platform becomes a very important part of that conversation is because we're now giving business users a way to create these tools, but also providing these tools in a secure way by putting up digital guardrails such as environment strategies, data loss prevention policies, or data policies, whatever they're called these days. So it gives IT peace of mind and allows them to focus on the things that are critical to the organization, but also the business users don't get frustrated and don't go downloading random things and creating their own solutions. So I think it's really important that we focus on why Power Platform is really important from that perspective too.
So I guess a follow-up question would be, what business uh, driver is Power Platform solving, or what are the use cases then, right? Like, what gap is it really filling?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, so many. So I work across multiple different industries. I do a lot of work in the manufacturing space, and a key area where Power Platform is such a great tool to use is when I have a manufacturing client that's utilizing SAP as their ERP system. A lot of Microsoft people that I work with will see a customer using SAP and think, I can't really do anything here. Well, actually, the Power Platform is uniquely positioned to create solutions directly linking into SAP. And a great business case that I'm working with right now is a client. They want to be able to create these maintenance orders within SAP while they're on the shop floor. And if any of you have worked with an ERP system before, you know they're massive, huge pieces of kit that take a lot of training to do. They're not usually very user friendly, etc. So if you create a Power App that connects directly to SAP that will request these maintenance orders while you're on the shop floor, you see something is broken, you hit a button, you request a maintenance order, and that goes straight to SAP without you having to go back to your computer and log on to SAP to create the work order. It is extremely powerful. It's just the increase in productivity that you will get from utilizing Power Platform in these kinds of scenarios is just it's just a massive ROI.
Okay, that makes sense. Anybody else from a use case standpoint?
Yeah, I think another use case that I'm very passionate about the Fusion Dev teams and being able to work together. And I come from a pro dev background, so it just all the more makes sense to be able to support and enable your citizen devs to get the best value out of your investments. And so I think the integration scenario or the story, whether it's web services or APIs that you have out there, being able to build those connections or your wrappers and expose them out for your consumers, like your end users or citizen users, or even your makers who are upskilling on the platform to start consuming and, using that has high value, because now you're accelerating your whole development process, right? You're working as a team. You kind of blend the worlds of citizen dev and pro dev. You could also involve your business stakeholders. So it's really is one full team with, every role that you can think of that can work together, having this fusion team working on an iterative fashion. So it's the whole story of being able to integrate with all your silos of data, no matter whether it's external or internal, and also being able to support both skill sets of being able to develop and code, and also being able to support those who want to, start with the low code technology is something that makes it very productive for organizations when they're looking for rapid app development or development of solutions that they're wanting to solve regular day-to-day problems. They don't have to wait for weeks or months for a team to work on something or get something out there that can immediately solve a problem. It's just a couple of weeks you can get a fully functional solution with the platform.
Do you mind
Okay.
if I ask you a quick question about that, Geeta? Because one of the
Yeah.
things that I come across when I'm talking to businesses about the Power Platform and their pro dev shop is they tend to feel very threatened that this is going to take away their jobs, that this is just, it's a toy, it's not a real development platform. How do you navigate those conversations?
Yeah, I think I have to. So when I first started with the platform, I had that little mind block, right? Why am I doing low code? What am I doing here? I'm supposed to be working with like server side and client side and, scripting and things like that. I think and even, I mean, it is a slightly difficult conversation to have with people. I always tell my colleagues or friends who come from a product background this to come in with an open mind. When you come in, don't expect things to work just like how you're used to doing with objects and classes and functions and methods. Just come in with an open mind. Think when you'd have to build or train your brain to shift the way you think. The moment you see Power Apps, start thinking. I love how April Dunham put it. I think she has this quote from her where she said, think of Power Apps, for example. It's like if Excel and PowerPoint had a child, right? So you think in those terms. You have to shift your way of thinking and make sure that you don't get pulled into the trenches of being a pro code and wanting to do things that you're able to do. You may not be able to do everything, but and we've seen how this platform has evolved. I think when I first started with the platform, probably was 8 years before, it's come a long way. There were a lot of things that you couldn't do back then, and then now there's a lot that you can do, and you don't see the value unless you try. Don't look at it from the outside. Step in, get your hands dirty, go and get under the hood and try it, because you're not going to see the value unless you try it out yourself. Because that's how I tried out a simple use case for a customer, and I was like, okay, maybe I should give this a try. And the moment you try, I'm like, wow, I can actually build something in days. I don't have to spend cycles of weeks. And now, you can hand it over to the client. They can maintain it. There's this whole, let's say there's an HR group that's not very tech savvy. They need something that they can quickly, wire up a SharePoint site or a list to a Power App and start working through their HR policies and approvals and things that are needed. So it does help to come in with an open mind and then actually get your hands dirty. That's the best way to get yourself used to these platforms. If you are, kind of feeling like me, like how I was back then, where why am I doing low code but I'm a pro coder?
Just to add to what you're saying, Kate. So I'm not I'm not a pro dev, but I had a friend who was a pro dev, and he had the same feeling, and then he started to use Power Apps, and then he came back to me and say, "You know what, Fumi, I really like Power Apps because there are a lot of things I can get done very quickly, and then focus on the other things that are like more complex, like the integrations and all of those things, the API connections, and I don't have to take a lot of my time trying to build out a form or build out the interface. I can do that very quickly with Power Apps. So it gives me that rapid start, and then I can focus on all of the extension that requires my pro dev skills." So I was like, "Yay, that's a good feedback." So yeah.
The good news is that if you are used to writing logic with pro code and all the data transformations, even though we call it low code, there are still concepts of programming that you would need to know. Especially when you get into complex use cases, wanting to do data transformation or manipulation of the data, writing complex queries. So if you are someone who's passionate about working on all of those complex scenarios, you are not going to miss doing that. We call it low code, but there are still concepts of programming that you will eventually get to that you would be applying. And the advantage is the best practices to do, like error handling and exceptions and things like that. So you can very easily, just bring that all over here and continue doing what you would normally do.
So let me ask you this question: what are the advantages of using Power Platform? I'll start with Rashona here.
I think what's been said, a big one is definitely the time that it takes to get these solutions to reality. So I remember my first exposure to it was doing like the app in a day training. I'm sure we all know that. And I was really excited because just in the space of the day, I was able to build out all these different components and I had some working solution at the end. So the amount of time that it takes to bring this stuff to reality using the Power Platform is probably one of the biggest advantages, as well as the accessibility of it. So I run a lot of training where I've trained a lot of people who don't come from a developer background, have jobs who barely even use computers during their day. But it's always nice to see them come along to the training, and then they're even able to build their own app from scratch that they're proud of and they can take away with them. So the ease of use and not needing too much training and technical background is a big advantage of it.
Perfect. Sounds good. And then Heidi, from your aspect, I know you're also big on SharePoint and other Office 365. So how does that integrate with that, and how easy is that?
Yeah, I would say that prior to my days at Avanade, I worked with a lot of small businesses and a lot of local banks and financial institutions. And one of the biggest advantages with that is it's included in the cost. They would get their Microsoft 365 licensing, and then whatever they were trying to do with the Power Platform, it was already there. They had these tools that they weren't using, so just to get those people up to speed and get them in touch with the very little training, as we mentioned, to use the tools that you're already paying for. Before we would go and look at any software, we'd say, can we build this in Power Platform first? And most of the time the answer was yes. So I think that the cost is a major advantage to the Power Platform as well.
Amazing. That's good. And then Rachel, from your aspect, I know you've been using Power Platforms for some time now. So talk about your experience.
Okay.
About,
Sorry.
yeah, from your experience, the use cases you've worked with.
Okay. For me, I think I'll first of all point out to the advantages of our platform, not really to the technical aspects, but when working with Power Platform, like it creates a way for you that you get an idea about designs. Like maybe you do not have any experience about how designs looks like, users experience, you do not have idea about accessibility, you get that particular idea about it. Then something else it brings to like soft skills, you get to understand problem solving, like how to face a particular problem, how to take on challenges, and also critical thinking to be able to see, okay, and there's one thing I understand that is actually very essential to know the basics of any tool. Like you have the opportunity to tell a client that, okay, this particular problem you're talking about, this is the tool in Power Platform that will solve it. So you get different soft skills with using Power Platform, and also with using Power Platform, like you get the opportunity to be able to transition from different parts, any career you are into. Are you an accountant before? You get to use Excel. So you can actually bring that skill, that's your Excel skill, into Power Platform. So it does not really matter about who you are or what particular tool you were using before you came into Power Platform, or what career. Either you are a programmer, a developer, you get to use that skill when you come into Power Platform. Yeah. So yes.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Natalie, any comments from your end?
Yeah, I agree. No, it also really helps you to get in touch with the business and actually figure out how does the process work, and how can they benefit from the Power Platform, how can they automate things that they may not even have thought about automating, and leveraging that, for example, in a Power Automate flow, or doing a RPA flow, just to make their life a little bit easier. I think that's the best advantage that I can think of using and leveraging the Power Platform. So it's so easy to set it up. It's quick, and you can solve problems that they weren't even aware they had. So yeah, that's it for
Okay.
me.
And I guess I saw I saw a question that, how can people get into Power Platform? So what are the resources that people can use to wrap up on either Power Platform knowledge or certifications? Kind of talk about that.
Yeah, I would say Microsoft Learn is a very good place to start. It has the pathway to certification, very easy to consume modules in bits, and it gives you the points that makes you feel like you're making progress as you go along. So I think Microsoft Learn is one of the good resources to start with.
And you have Copilot as well now for Power Platform that's just been announced. So I think Copilot is another great option if you're learning. However, my governance cap will come on, and just make sure that if you are turning it on, do not turn it on in the production environment, please. Make sure it is in a correct environment. But I think Copilot is a great maker enablement accelerator. So if you want to learn how to use the Power Platform, just spin up your own developer environment. They're not super difficult to create. I'm pretty sure there's about 7 blog posts out there. If you Google create my own Power Platform developer environment, it'll teach you how to do that. And just start building. Think of a use case. Think of something at your house that you could build a use case for. I built an app that helps my partner and I um, record fun dates that we want to go on and schedule them and things like that. Start out small, don't overcomplicate the process, and if you get frustrated, reach out for help. That's really how you're gonna learn. It's just by getting in there and just doing it.
Anybody else
I
wants to
think
jump
that,
in?
I mean, also events like this, we're giving you an intro to the Power Platform. We're giving you our thoughts and stuff. So how I get a lot of my information is I'll go follow all these people on Twitter that are on this call, and then I'll see what they repost. And those are some of the best resources because those are the people who are out there working on this stuff. So I think Twitter is a very valuable resource to get started at least.
Microsoft Learn is probably where I send people first, I think, like we said, but also keep a lookout because Microsoft also often run like these free virtual training days that you can attend. So on their event site, they do stuff on like Power Platform and some other topics that you can sign up for. And also something that they've recently introduced is, you might have heard of this new thing called learning rooms. So you can find it on Microsoft Learn, where you can sign up for it. It's like a Microsoft team that you're a part of, with like a learning expert, as well as other peers who are also on that learning journey. So I run one of these learning rooms as an example. So I've got my own Microsoft team where I post things around the Power Platform, and it's a space for people to also ask questions and interact with their other peers who might be learning as well. So that's especially useful if you're studying for a certification and you feel like you need that additional support and people to chat to about it. Then definitely check out the learning rooms that they've introduced as well.
Yeah, and also one thing too is that don't be scared to ask questions, especially when you're stuck. That stops people a lot when they're actually trying to solve a problem or trying to learn a new platform. So when they are working through a learning path, or they are working through an application or automation, they get stuck in a particular solution. So they are scared to ask questions. So don't be scared to ask questions when you are stuck, or when you do not understand anything. Reach out and ask questions, and follow Power at its, yeah, before on Twitter.
Sounds good. So let's talk about what are the components of Power Platform? I know we talked about the use cases, but for the folks who are listening in or join, they might not even know the basic components. So anybody wants to take a stab at that? Because I know we talk about RPA, and different components, the Power Apps, whatnot. So maybe somebody wants to write it down.
Yeah, I can do that one. So the Power Platform, all of the components. So it's you have Power Apps. So you have a Canvas app, a model-driven app. A Canvas meaning a blank slate. You have full design, full freedom in creating your app. And a model-driven app is more data-centered, data-focused. It has different views. You can add in business process flows, meaning you can add different steps in a process, and that goes a little bit deeper. Then there's Power Automate, and Power Automate has the cloud version, and you have the RPA version, or the desktop version. So the cloud version allows you to automate steps online. So let's say you receive a certain email, you want to update an item somewhere, you want to post something in Teams. Whenever somebody submits something, an email with a specific keyword, then Power Automate Cloud Flows is for you. And then there's RPA, the Robotic Process Automation Flow, or desktop flow, which is a very long word to say always. But the RPA flow is more automating repetitive steps that you take. So for example, you go into SAP, as Em mentioned, you can do an RPA flow that goes into SAP, goes to a specific table, does a certain action, and you can automate that. So it really goes into the local Windows or local Linux or whichever you're running, but in the local PC, it can do things for you, the repetitive steps. Then there's virtual agent. So a virtual agent can be something. Let's say you're on a website of your local bank, and you have a pop-up that has a chatbot, like, "Hey, how can I help you? How can I be of service?" So that's a virtual agent. So that can be a specific script helping you in sales or in finance, or whatever you program that virtual agent to have knowledge on or be able to transfer to a live agent. And let's see, then there's Power Pages, or formerly portals. And Power Pages allows you to create a external site, an external facing website, basically, that holds information that you can then share with your customer or with external people. And let me think, what is the other one? I'm missing one. There's Power BI. In Power BI, you can do reporting, you can do dashboards, reports, create KPIs, metrics, the whole shebang, excuse me. But from there, you can do that. And the nice thing about all of these components is that they are integratable with each other. So you can have a Power App or a model-driven app that has a virtual agent in it, that has an embedded Power BI dashboard, that if you press on a button, it it triggers a flow. So all of those steps you can actually combine, and that's I think the biggest strength within the Power Platform, that it's so easily combinable, mashable. And if anybody can jump in, I don't think I forgot some, but I think that's the whole platform.
No, you got them all. That's them all. I think it's also worth mentioning that there's also things like AI Builder, low code components, being able to create, AI models without writing any code, which blows my mind every time I think about it. I think it's really interesting that we include Power BI in the Power Platform because it is technically part of the Power Platform. But to me, the skill set required to develop in Power BI is significantly different to the skill set required to develop in Power Apps. I don't know if anyone wants to disagree with me on that. Feel free to. I like that they all sit together, and you are right, they all do communicate together really, really well. But I always see Power BI as the redheaded stepchild sometimes of the Power Platform. I kind of just put it over there, and I have a guy that talks about that. But everything else, I'll definitely chat about.
Yeah, I mean, I agree on Power BI. So I actually started in Power BI. I did reporting and KPIs and metrics, and from there I dabbled a little bit in SharePoint, and I grew into the whole Power Platform. But yeah, the Power BI requires a very specific type of knowledge that's very similar, as I think Rachel mentioned, to Excel. So it's kind of the Excel language you can use in Power BI, that type of logic, but it is different than from developing an app or doing a flow. So yeah, I agree.
And how difficult is it going to be to master all of them? Like, seems like there's so many different components like Power BI, Power Apps. Like, if you're a developer, is it easy, or are you going to be focused on just one component? Let's say you might master Power Apps.
Well, like M said, it always be for me the Power Platform and Power BI. So if you want to learn Power BI, you're on the data track, which is kind of all the way so far away from us. But you can learn Power Apps, Power Automate. They are very closely knitted because most of the applications will need some sort of automation. Most of the automations will need some sort of user interface to get the data in. So they are very close. Power Virtual Agent is a bit also kind of a bit away. However, it's something that you can easily learn and stretch into. And then Power Pages is fine if it's kind of a basic portal, but then it can start to get very complex, especially around the UI. Then you may need to have some specific you need to be like a front end developer to modify the interface, and you need to have like additional knowledge around developing portals, the interface of the portals, which kind of requires some niche set of skills. But other than that, you can learn all, but the Power BI is you can learn how to build a few dashboards, but like saying I'm a data analyst or specialist or data engineering analysis, like a completely different track. That's my opinion anyway.
Anybody else wants to jump in?
Okay. Okay.
Oh,
Sorry.
go ahead, Rachel.
Okay, for what Foyin said concerning Power BI, I do not know anything on Power BI, but there's one thing to notice is that there's so many tools in Power Platform for you not to be overwhelmed. So I think it's better to choose one tool. And Power Apps and Power Automate goes well together, like what Foyin has explained. And also, you can, after learning Power Apps and Power Automate, and you see that, okay, I'm actually getting better in these particular tools, you can also understand how to control like basic knowledge on the rest. Also, you can improve your knowledge, but just know that, okay, I'm very good at this particular tool. And there's no need for you thinking that, okay, I just want to learn all at the same time. You're definitely going to get overwhelmed because I did. Yeah. Thank you. Yeah. Hi.
I definitely agree with everyone here. I think it's important to know what all the components do. You don't need to be a master of every single one. The one that I will say you should have at least functioning knowledge of is Power Automate, because without Power Automate truly you can't build anything decent. If you look at Power Apps, you really do need some Power Automate in there to actually do something, is my opinion. Same with PVA. I think PVA doesn't do a whole lot unless you are able to use Power Automate. The only tool that I think that you don't need a lot of Power Automate to do, which is why I do a lot of it, is Power Pages. You don't really need to know a lot of Power Automate in there. You just need to know where your data is, how to set it up. If you know some liquid, that's really helpful, things like that. There is a range of different tools available in the Power Platform, and I think they all have varying levels of learning curves in there. I personally think that Power Virtual Agents is the easiest tool to get started with. It's pretty fun and pretty easy to get very quick results by creating your own chatbot. And now you can even do things like utilizing ChatGPT models to link it up to a specific URL and ask questions. I mean, you could literally have a chatbot running in less than 5 minutes if you wanted to. That's I have a lot of opinions. I apologize.
We all love opinions. I was going to add that if you are, very Power BI focused, if you're coming from a Power BI background, I feel like there is the opportunity to organically upskill and integrate with Power Apps and Power Automate, be it for write back capabilities from your Power BI reports. It's a much simpler format of a Canvas app that you can embed in your Power BI reports and be able to, persist data back to your backend. And then in the process, maybe you want to refresh your data set or tap into your Power BI alerts, do some event-driven subscriptions. Those, Power Automate kind of just naturally comes in. So if I don't think it's not very hard to transition or learn how to do Power Apps and Power Automate if you're already doing Power BI. But I think it really depends on the use case or the need of the hour. If you see a scenario, just jump into it and try integrating. That integration has been made quite intuitive where you can, embed an app, kick off a Power Automate workflow if needed from the context of Power BI. Not so much on the PVA end yet. I haven't seen any, pressing business use cases that have Power BI and PVA working together. And then now we have the Copilot and Power BI coming. So there's more generative AI and conversational chatbots coming our way. But I think that transition, if you are a pure Power BI person and you want to kind of take a stab at the other components, Power Apps and Power Automate can flow in quite easily.
I'm going to jump in and I'm going to actually flip this around. We talk about all the different products and what they can do, but it's also equally as important to know your process before you even get started. Working as a business, know what you're trying to do and map that out and then decide. The technology is there, I promise. But just if you've got to have your solid business process down first, then you can kind of see where you need to go next with the products. So I think that's just one really important place that people get lost and overlook sometimes, because sometimes people are just doing processes because that's the way they've always done it. But now we have all these things and we come in and we say, you can do all these things, but they don't know what they don't know. So I think that's really the first step, is just kind of nailing that down, and then the rest will come.
Arshana, anything from you?
No, pretty much agree with all that was said. We were talking about Power BI, but there's also some great things, like Geetha was saying, that you can do with Power BI and the other tools together. So I was actually running a session yesterday with some people about some of this stuff. So you could have a Power BI report and bring in elements like Power Apps and Power Automate into it if you want to as well. So you can do things like you can have a button in your report, people can click on that, and then it can go and automate some process that you've built in Power Automate. And then there's also some cool stuff with Power Apps as well, where you might have a report that you've built, but then you've also got an app people are using, and you can embed your report within that app for people to see. And also the other way around, where you might have a Power BI report, and within that you might have also built an app. You can embed that in it. People can click around in the report and then also use the app side by side. So that's just an example of how sort of Power BI can also come together with the other tools as well.
Rishon, I definitely agree with you. I think part of my job is to figure out the best solution for a customer using the Power Platform. And there's so many different ways you could use the Power Platform to solve a problem. And one of the things that we have done in the past is if my customer is dead set on using Power BI, they are Power BI wizards, they love it until the day they die. I will likely recommend a Power App built into a PBI dashboard instead. So I think you bring up a really good point of there's many ways to create a solution. Heidi's comment on having your process down first is also really, really important. Keep it simple, and yeah, if your business that you're speaking to is used to doing things a certain way, it's easier to go with the flow than it is to go against the grain. And I have learned that the hard way many times.
Yeah, I find that Power BI is the one that most organizations are either already using or it's the one that they know about compared to the other stuff.
It's the granddaddy of the Power Platform, really,
Yeah,
isn't it?
that's a good way to put it.
It's the same when at the Power Platform conference last year in Orlando when Heidi, I'm going to pick on SharePoint just a little bit. All the SharePoint people saw model-driven apps and thought it was this brand new software, a new thing that Microsoft came out with, and I'm like, here, I've been working with Dynamics 365 for 12 years now. This is not new.
Okay, so um, I guess we're talking about different components now. So I'll take a step back, and I know we talked about Power Platform, we talked about Power Automate. Um, let's talk about Canvas apps for a second, right? Um, what are the different components, and what are the use cases there?
I would say one of the major reasons for building with a Canvas application would be the user interface. So we have some users that are very particular about how they would like the application to look, about the experience, about the colors, and all of that. So if you have such business users, then Canvas app would probably be the way to go because you have all the flexibility to do everything and put in the bells and whistles and the colors that they give the user basically the experience that they would like to have, which is very restrictive in the model driven application. So that's one big call out for me.
I can jump into I'm currently working on an info path remediation project. So we're using Canvas apps. That is the predecessor to InfoPath. It's not the replacement, but it is the successor, I guess. Whatever comes after InfoPath is the next logical choice. So but then even within Canvas apps, you have to start thinking about going back to the SharePoint roots. There's these Canvas apps can be embedded in your SharePoint list, or they can be standalone. So there's just many different ways that you can start to build these applications, and then comes the conversations about maintenance. And if this is embedded, how do we, does that show up on our COE reports, and doing all this maintenance and just governing the whole platform, I would say. So they're kind of like, you start there and then the rest will come, which I'm sure Em can speak to, the whole governance conversation, because I didn't have a whole lot of experience with the governance until I started working more in the Canvas app and the InfoPath remediation world. So it's really, once you get into it, it's going to be your most important topic is the governance. So Canvas apps leads to governance, essentially.
And that was my follow-up question about governance. So, yeah, talk about, because security and governance is so critical now, especially if you're in the financial sector or even government, right? So governance would come into play. So kind of talk about that.
Sure, and I would really love to hear a little bit from Foyen on this as well because she's going to be speaking about it tomorrow, and I think we all deserve a sneak peek of her presentation. So governance is super important, and it's allowing you to do something called creating safe spaces for makers. I think if there's anything I'm known for at this stage, it is the safe spaces for makers person. And essentially what that means is putting up digital guardrails to allow your business users to create applications in a safe and secure way. Digital guardrails are essentially things like environment strategy, providing safe environments for makers to create things as they progress throughout their Power Platform learning journey. and also implementing data policies to ensure they don't use connectors that they shouldn't be using. When you look at where risk can really happen with the Power Platform, there's a couple of places. Key places are definitely in connectors, making sure that they cannot access your Dataverse production cost table along with Twitter as an example. You definitely don't want to have those two connectors together. But you also need to look at the risk involving in allowing business users to leverage Power Pages. Going to say something a little bit controversial that some people will disagree with me on, but Power Pages is not a citizen developer tool in any way, shape, or form. I do not believe that makers should be creating websites that you could potentially leak your data externally to. That's my opinion. Foyen, I would love to hear a little bit about your opinion on governance.
Yeah, so I'm starting to feel like you've seen my slides for tomorrow. So I have these do's and don'ts. And the first thing is talking about the environment. And the second thing on it is the DLP policies. I'm like, have you taken a look at my slides for tomorrow? Anyway, so other than that, we're talking a bit about user management. It's also important to think long term, like when you're creating your security roles, don't tie them to individual people. Use like Azure AD groups to manage the users and the roles, and then assign the AD groups to the security roles that you've created in your Dataverse, rather than tying them to individuals. We also spoke a lot about security, thinking of tenant isolation, right? Some people don't even know it's there. So these are some of the things that you need to not ignore, but actually take actions on them. And then we also have the customer logbox, and there are a lot of monitoring tools available to us too. So the tenant-wide analytics, which I think was recently launched, not so recently anymore, but it's now like we have the whole Power Apps, Analytics, Power Automate, there's Dataverse. You can start to see a lot around what's going on in your tenants. And then we also have the COE toolkit, which shows us in depth into some of the other things. So part of what we're talking about tomorrow is what does what. Because then now I'm sure all of the admins will be like, oh, so many places to go to. So when I need this, where do I go to? When I need to do this, when I need to see the usage, the flows that are being used, the ones that are not being used, the API calls, where do I find that? So that's one of the things I'm going to talk about tomorrow. This is where you find your API call, your plugin usage, your API call usage, your users, most active users of apps and flows that have not been used in a very long time. And then I'm also talking about managed environments too, and what the advantages that brings into play for us. So yeah, governance is always key.
I love that, and also they've made ALM a lot more accessible to makers, because to Geetha's point earlier, people that are using the Power Platform to develop tools, the majority of them have never picked up code in their life. The majority of them are people that have used Excel and things like that. They don't really understand things like what's a variable, what's a solution, why should I care what a solution is? And of course, ALM, or application lifecycle management, comes into that. So now with the introduction of managed environments plus pipelines and being able to automate deployments really allows your makers to become true low-code developers.
Yes, it does.
Anybody else about governance?
I want to ask one question about this. So what are you folks seeing in the community surrounding like customer managed encryption keys? I think that's one of the features that came with managed environments, but you see a lot of folks utilizing that in their environments.
I have no idea what that is.
Basically, so Microsoft encrypts a service, right? They're using their own certificates on the services themselves, but they're giving folks the opportunity using Azure Key Vault to go and swipe out the certificate underneath and utilize their own encryption keys. So legal, we're kind of doing that with almost all the services that we utilize, but I'm just curious uptick of, is that kind of pushing managed environment use through because of that feature or not?
I didn't know that existed until this very second, which is interesting. I think that there will be an uptick of managed environments. But I think it can be very confusing for a lot of people because you have the COE starter kit with all the beautiful bells and whistles in there, but you also have the COE for automation too, which is a separate toolkit specifically for automation. And now you have managed environments. So my concern is that things are a little bit all over the place for admins to have to go to manage different things. I think they are going to eventually centralize everything, and the COE toolkit has come leaps and bounds since it was first released or first taken over by Microsoft from the community and then released monthly. And Manuela and her team have done a phenomenal job with making that so much easier to install now.
Cool. All right. I'm taking at least the torch from Abdul for a minute here. So one of the things that we started off, and Em, I think you mentioned about Copilot, but let's talk about like some of the cool futuristic stuff that we're seeing coming out. Build was just a few weeks ago. I know some folks have demoed or at least getting their hands on it, but what do we like currently see? And then is there any like future things that we can talk about without breaking NDA or stuff that maybe we would like to see in there as a feedback approach too? So I'm going to start with Rachel because she's up in the top corner and she's been quiet for a while. So
Okay, for me, I have no idea. Yeah, but yeah, for now, I have no idea. Yeah.
anyone else?
Yeah, I think that's fine. I think we're all just starting to get used to it, like to use it. A lot of it is, I think, only available in the US region, hasn't been shipped to Europe yet. So I think when we start to play with it a bit more, then we can start to say, I wish you could do this. And I wish, but for now, it seems to be like really great and amazing. So I guess it's only when we start to engage, we're like, this isn't exactly what I expected it to do. And then maybe we can have some bright ideas and other things that it could do.
I've been having some fun with it. So yeah, it is only available in US regions, but you can just sign up for a developer environment based in the US. That's what I've been doing.
Okay.
Yeah, so just give that a go. It's free. Just go create an environment developer and set it in the US region. So then the stuff that you get there, not all of it is available yet. It's still rolling out. But the stuff that's there is the ability to, like for Power Apps, you can use natural language to create your app. So it's like you can type in what you want an app. So I can say, I want an app to track events. So what it will do is it will create a Dataverse table for you. You can also use the Copilot to then make changes to that table if you want to create new columns for it, add in some sample data, change the data type of it, and then it will spin up the app for you. There's also this component that's available in Canvas apps, which is a Copilot component as well, which is pretty cool. I'm not sure if anyone has played around with that one. So you can add this Copilot component in your Canvas app. So what it does is it gives your user the ability to kind of like have a chat GPT there, but it's looking at your data that you've connected to in the app. So rather than needing to go and figure out, how many events am I running this month, you can just type that in the chat within the app and it comes to you. The other stuff that's there is the Power Virtual Agent stuff. So that's pretty cool. You can use it to, once again, natural language if you want to create topics for your bot. So, if you want a bot for people to place a pizza order, you can say, I want this topic to let people place an order. What questions should it ask? And it spins that up, as well as the boost conversations in Power Virtual Agent. So I think this was mentioned before. So this is where you can just grab like a URL to like, your SharePoint or some type of external site that's there. And then it will, so if I ask a question, like what is a Power App? My bot doesn't know that because I haven't trained it on that. But if I put in something like Microsoft Learn, the URL, it will go and search Microsoft Learn, that site, to provide the answer for people. So same thing works as well if you've got any internal documents on SharePoint. You can also link it up to that without needing to go through the process of manually creating everything. So yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff. So I think the Power Apps, Power Virtual Agents are the stuff that has the most Copilot things introduced already that's available to try out. I think there's a little bit there for Power Automate and Power Pages as well, just in terms of telling it to build certain components for you.
Yeah, they suck. Don't even bother. They're not good yet.
I did try the Power Pages one, but then I was like, oh, is that it?
It's bad. Yeah, it's
It'll
really
get
bad.
better.
It will. I think you're right. I think the Power App one is the one that was the most impressive to me. I don't make Canvas apps. I've never made Canvas apps. I live in the world of model-driven apps. So when I was able to get it to create a somewhat functioning, not hideous Canvas app, is blown away.
I know,
There
I
are
love that because I don't like Canvas apps either, or making them, but it was fun just to type it in, and then you have a nice looking app just ready for you to go.
Exactly. I think it is really important to note, though, and this is my governance cap coming back on, when you use Copilot for Power Apps, it does create those tables for you, but it is not solution aware and it does not look at there are other tables that already exist in the database. So make sure that you are only using Copilot again in a trial environment. Make sure that you clean it out. It does not do things like relationships or anything like that yet either. So those are just important things to note too.
I'll jump into on not on Copilot, but more on the AI. There's a new feature in Power Automate which have saved me leaps and bounds of time. The format data by examples. I don't know if users have tried this, but it's incredible. It's an easy way to, if your flow is retrieving data from somewhere and it comes back, for example, from SharePoint, and it pulls back a people value and it's got the claims token in front of it. So it's got a bunch of garbage in front of the name and you want to know how to format that and just grab the name rather than doing endless amounts of searching the internet to find examples. You can actually just drop it into this little format data by examples and to say, give me the formula and it'll spit it out for you. So that is just
I love that one.
really cool thing that
I know it's great if you can't remember expressions like me. It's amazing.
Exactly. Or for people that are, the low code people that are like, I have no idea where to start with this. Like, it's a really powerful tool that is an easy way, a nice use case to get people started with those AI features.
There is also one that I want to add on to with ChatGPT and OpenAI becoming more and more popular, that people are starting to use that. I put in a query this past week, like, hey, get me a PowerFX query that does this certain thing for me. And it gave me a PowerFX query that sounded too good to be true. I put it in my Power Apps, and lo and behold, it did not exist. So we do need to be careful-ish with AI generated formulas. So don't I would say don't just copy paste what it's telling you when it's from ChatGPT or OpenAI, but be careful what's in there and look for it. So in my example, it was something about searching in a string, and it gave me an answer. I was like, that's perfect. I mean, if that exists, that's perfect, but it didn't. So just a fair warning for people out there that it's getting there, but sometimes it may give an unreliable answer.
I'll just add a quick thing. When I look at AI integration with Power Platform, I'm looking at it in like three flavors, right? One is automation. Think of it like, you get an invoice in an email, you let that get automated, pass it through, generative AI. It can grab stuff, or even AI Builder for that matter, and you can perform approvals and route things and leverage AI for that. Number two being your app development, which is your maker copilot, right? Like Heidi talked about programming by example, and then there is, you import an Excel that becomes an app, builds out the tables like Emma talked about, and then you have the user experiences, which is what Rishona had an example for, where she said like PDA, you can have a generative AI note to it, you can have a multi-turn conversation with the bot and have generative AI generate those responses. I think what I'm very excited about is the ability to have large language models looking at your data. I think that's coming, that's in the future, and I think that's going to be pretty big for everyone here. Being able to build LLMs and being able to infuse your organizational data, and then if you look at it, you can get more sophisticated, right? You could tap into Azure OpenAI to come up with, answers or formatted responses. And then you could even wrap that up into a custom connector and say, hey, here's, this department, you need something that talks to our legacy system here. go ask a question. We should be able to go look up all of your different nodes and bring out the answers for, which is something which is similar to how your user Copilot works today. Like when you turn that on in your Canvas app and you have a Dataverse backed Power App, you're able to go ask a question saying, hey, what's the status on my approval? It can look into your data in the back end and pull it. So, but think of that in a much bigger picture of being able to do that enterprise wide, right? So I think have the ability to infuse AI with the concept of large language models on your own data is something that I'm very looking forward to.
Yeah, that's what we're doing a lot of right now in the construction space where health and safety is really important. And actually, it kind of comes back to your point earlier of using Power BI and Power Virtual Agents. Where we've actually been able to do great stuff with that is leveraging PVA, connecting it to an OpenAI model, and being able to ask questions of the data of like, what is the likelihood that we will have a serious accident in the next month? If so, where is it most likely to happen? Like that kind of stuff is really, really cool. Um, and just before we move off of Power Platform AI, I think it's important for us to also mention the Viva suite of tools too. So not only is AI part of what we do as a maker environment from Copilot perspective, the ability to utilize AI from a productivity, there's the word, it's late, productivity perspective with Viva Sales, Viva Marketing blows me away. The being able to just use AI to create your marketing emails and just say, hey, I want this to be in a funny tone or I want this to be in a professional tone. And it does the whole thing for you. It's why do we have jobs anymore? I don't even know. It's amazing.
Yeah, and then to add to that, I think even with your Windows 11 Copilot and Microsoft 365 Copilot coming, soon we'll all have hands on, previewing it and being able to kick off, like have your own little bots that do all the magic for you, like setting up reminders, auto scheduling events, being able to tap into your connectors and, anything in the ecosystem really. It really looks like it's going to be this one big family of AI components that can talk and reach, and to all corners that you can think of or that you have access to, and you're able to delegate those tasks and automate a lot of them, and in turn, increase productivity and save a lot of time on your end, so you can focus on the things that you really need to be focusing on.
Awesome. I love that conversation. I also, so I want to have a little bit of fun with this. I know I tried to sneak into futures, but show of hands, who thinks that, another 6 months, maybe a year from now, we see Power Automate Desktop say, I've seen you do this 3 times and I want to automate that for you.
Yeah, it's heading there, I think.
Have you heard of Process Advisor by any chance?
Mhm.
Process Advisor will tell you that.
Yep.
But it's just,
Yeah, they're just gonna
it's
say
a really good point with, Windows 11 and all these things just combining.
Yeah.
It's like those lines are so blurred right now too, and
Yep.
continuing to blur more. So that's awesome. I want to go back, and I know we saved like the tough questions for last, but I want to go back just for a minute and talk about, Em, you mentioned about ALM and, application lifecycle management. Give me, I guess, from a perspective of, say folks have gone out and, we shudder, but it's like folks have already begun building in a default environment. They've done some stuff, which is, personal productivity or whatever we want to call it. But, how do they really get from that point to maybe, having something a little more formalized to say, I really want to make sure that this is solution driven, that it's going into the right environments at the right times, following, I know I joked separately, but the red, yellow, and green type of environments that I just learned, thank you, a few weeks ago. But kind of following a little bit more rigidity to make sure that just not getting things that are unmanaged pushed out into the environment.
Yep.
So, any best practices, thoughts surrounding
Oh
that?
yeah, I got some thoughts on this. It's more common than you think. I am working with a customer right now, very very well known brand, and they have a default environment where they've been doing all of their development and nothing is in solutions. They have 120 production apps in default, none of them are in solutions. So this is not an uncommon scenario. It happens all the time. And the methodology that we deploy to help sort that is, first of all, an environment strategy is key. We talk about what does that look like? What does ALM mean to you? Does that mean dev test prod? Does that mean something else? What does criticality mean to you? So when Chris mentioned the red, yellow, green environment, that's just my way of determining how important an environment is depending on the apps that live in there and how much resources should we dedicate from an IT perspective to those. So ALM becomes important when an application it has weight to the company, as in it might not be a critical application, but it impacts certain people's productivity. So in order to make changes to those applications and test them correctly, we have to deploy ALM. The customer that I'm talking about right now, they're making changes to those apps in the default environment live, and they are apps that are critical to the organization. So we need to create an environment strategy. We need to talk to them about data loss prevention policies and those environment strategies, and then we need to put a plan in place to put the apps and their components in a solution, migrate the solution out, test them, put them in prod. But there's also really key part of this that a lot of people forget is the communication to the makers on why this is happening, what ALM means, why it's important, and where your new apps are sitting. So it happens all the time. It is a really common thing that I see.
Awesome. Any
I
other
I
take?
have I have a question. Yeah, I have a question about something, like especially when you talked about default solution, like companies building all their applications in a default solution. So there's something I recently noticed where they get to use Azure DevOps to create pipelines and move solutions from the testing environment to the developer environment and maybe the production environment. So I don't know if you can shed more light on that.
So I'm going to ask the rest of the panel if they can. I'll tell you that I know that you can do it. I'm more comfortable
Yeah,
with talking about pipelines from managed environments perspective, but I know you can do it with Azure DevOps. I just haven't done it before.
yeah, sure.
I can just add some color to your question there, Rachel. So you can use Azure DevOps. You have the Power Platform build actions available. You can definitely leverage that. If you want to look at how they're done, you can get the ALM accelerator for apps. You can get that installed on your tenant, and then that comes packaged with. I mean, there's a little bit of prerequisite where you need the right privileges to set up the bits in Azure DevOps, like setting up all the settings, being able to set up service principals and things like that. But once that's done, you can use that as an opportunity to go look at how these pipelines work behind the scenes. It's a packaged front end or packaged ALM acceleration application that you have, where you have a front end where you can queue up deployment of the apps from one environment to the other. But then it kicks off those pipelines behind the scenes, whether you're going from dev to UAT, UAT to prod. It's a good place to go and kind of get under the hood and see how those build actions are kicked off, and what does the output look like, and what are the different steps that are taking place in a sequence, and then you could use that as a template to customize your own pipelines if needed.
Thank you.
I just want to add to the conversation too. I think that we've skipped over one major topic, which is adoption in the Power Platform. I think that it kind of goes with the governance and the COE toolkit comes with like the welcome email. There's some little pieces built in, but I think what's been most surprising for me working with Power Platform with info path remediation especially is we're using like SharePoint as a data source. So we do need that connection between SharePoint and Power Apps. And one of my main challenges has been users continuing to use classic experience versus modern. So there are some things that I never imagined I would run into, but I was wondering if anyone else from the group had any other tips or strategies or things they've run into with just adoption or, ideas for the group.
Yes, this is a topic that I'm really glad you brought up, because when I talk about governance, a lot of people see it as locking things down and not letting makers do anything when really it's supposed to be the opposite. What is the point of having the Power Platform if you're going to lock it down, not let anybody actually use it? You do run the risk of um, it's detrimental to adoption, essentially. So I think communication is obviously the most important part of this, right? So making sure that makers understand why they're changing, the importance behind that, the security reasons behind that, why it's going to be easier and better for them. And I think it's always good to give them a timeline on when you're going to phase out the older version versus the newer version too, right? Don't just take it away from them because they're going to flood you with support questions and be like, why is it broken? Why'd you take this away from me? You'll just get a bunch of those kinds of questions. But I'm really glad you brought that up because it is a topic that often gets very much overlooked.
And of course, it looks like we lost Heidi, but that's okay. Anybody else? Anyone else in that one? All right. Abdul, do we have any other questions from folks? I know we've been kind of tackling as they've been coming in.
Yeah, I don't see any questions from the audience.
Just take a moment to say thank you to our audience. I really appreciate the engagement. There's a lot of great questions. Thank you all to our panelists for helping out with the questions, getting everybody's experience, knowledge, skill set up beyond what we had before we even started this call. So appreciate that.
So I guess last question for everybody is, where do you see Power Platform going, and what is the future of Power Platform?
Well, I
Okay.
think, sorry,
Sorry.
Rachel, you can take this one first.
Okay, I see more pro developers coming into Power Platform because I think there's a big perception there where they think that they can't because they're already professional developers and they're thinking, okay, Power Platform is just about low code. And with what Microsoft is actually driving towards right now to make an opportunity for them to work more on fusion developments in Power Platform. So I see in the future, I see more developers adopting Power Platform. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good point as well. I wasn't thinking of that one, but that's right because we're kind of seeing, those fusion teams and everything like that coming in with developers. The point I was going to make is sort of the trend we're seeing now with all of these Copilot features coming in. And as we're seeing in action now with things like Power Apps, I think that's where we're heading, where people don't need to have as much training as they do at the moment. I know right now it's easy enough if you want to go and build an app. But soon that's going to be reduced to, just a matter of minutes. Anyone can just go type what they want and get that spun up without needing to sit there and manually drag things around on the screen and build it out themselves. So from my perspective, I feel like that's where we're heading with it.
Are you ready for my opinion?
Go ahead.
Of course,
Bring
I have
it.
an opinion. I think it's the journey of Power Apps or Power Platform as a whole has been really interesting to me because when it first came out, everyone thought it was a toy. People were building super cool like video games and stuff like that, like really rad stuff, but no one really took it very seriously until I honestly think until we had the global pandemic and people were forced to be more digital. And the digital transformation of 2020 really, Power Apps just totally exploded. I think it's going to continue on that trend with the focus on AI, but also RPA is playing a massive part in my conversations with customers these days. So RPA, robotic process automations, right? Robotic process automations, is that right? Is that what the OR stands for? Yes. Okay. I see nodding because I always forget, is it robotic or is it something else? Um, so just being able to do more with less, which is, the phrase that we're all hearing about, is definitely going to be the theme. It's going to be taken more and more seriously. It is a legit development platform. Just because something is low code does not mean it is low complexity.
I think that everything that everyone said, but just going back to the Power Platform conference, I mean, they sold it out last year. They're trying to do it again this year. I think that there's just a huge following, and that's that proves it by the numbers that they're getting for these conferences. But we haven't even talked about Microsoft Fabric and what that's going to do for the Power Platform. And I'm not going to pretend like I know much about it, but I just have to say that that is definitely going to shape the future of the platform as well.
Yeah, I'll add to Heidi's point. That's something I was going to bring up as well. I'm glad you brought it up. It's exciting to think of this story of having a OneDrive for data, right? And data kind of is the king. It is the holy grail of getting all of your processes started on the right path. And Fabric kind of connects the dots for us there. You have all of these silos of data and being able to bring them into your one lake and being able to have that one window to all your different types of data or data stores. I think it's pretty exciting. I know the being able to integrate with the Power Platform components is something that's evolving, but I definitely agree with Heidi that that's definitely coming our way. There's going to be some huge changes and waves of improvements and involvement coming with the platform where you're not restricted to just Power BI living inside of Fabric and being able to talk to all of your different data stores, but now being able to pull in data wares, being able to have the whole integration with the rest of the platform, where Fabric is kind of just literally what it means, the fabric that's going to just tie in every thread together. I think that's definitely coming our way. And then the other thing I was also, that I'm looking forward to, I know AI Builder is not very cost friendly at the moment. But I think the more adoption we see, having this low code version of being able to work with OpenAI and any of your cognitive services in Azure is something that I think will become more accessible. And I'm hoping that there will be changes to licensing and there will be more improvements on that end. But I do see a lot of value in there because I know I saw the screenshot today of someone from EPPC where it was a keynote from Charles Lamana, and the background said 33 million active users. That just speaks to the intensity at which this platform has been evolving and is being adopted. And with AI being the trend now, and you're seeing that everywhere, I think this concept of having a low-code version of AI, which we already have AI Builder, but also being able to expand that to other components as well, and having it at a more accessible format is something that would be great. And I'm hoping that would come along as well, so you don't have to have the skill set to stand up an infrastructure behind the scenes, which it can be something that Microsoft takes care for you, and all you have to worry about is just know how to connect the dots and know the right services to use.
Just looking to see. So I know thank you for handling. I know there was a question about community groups. I know we could probably talk for the next hour about the different available groups and who runs what and whatnot. But yeah, it's there's so many resources out there. I highly recommend starting with the local for sure. Something I know we didn't talk about this. Maybe I asked this question when we were at the our Dynamics Live, about a month ago. But one of the things, if folks want to entertain discussion around it, I think we should, accessibility and options in our applications. And I know one of the panels, I think I threw the curveball question. I asked, hey, does anybody know about the European Accessibility Act that's coming up in 2025? And everybody's forced to, we say forced, we should be, but applications need to, reach WCAG and certain things in the community that, basically are available for everyone. So thoughts on, how companies should start approaching it if they aren't already, planning for what seems to be a very short leash now for that.
Yeah, we have been doing that with the Canvas app builds that we've been doing. So what I've learned thus far is there is an accessibility checker in Power Apps. So as you're building, you can run it through the checker as you're building, and it will actually point out the pieces of your app that aren't in compliance. And if you click on it, it'll actually take you to it to help you fix it. So there's been really good contextual learning there. It'll actually help you solve the issue and get it up to standard there. That's one of the things. And then I forgot the other one, but it's definitely going to be. There's pieces of that in the COE toolkit as well. Some of the repositories of where you can, I can't think of the name right now, but like a library, like a brand template library that you can deploy on all your apps where the colors are within the correct ratios. So I think they're making it a lot easier getting the accessibility tools out there for you to standardize your apps in that sense.
Awesome. I'll just say one of the comments that came through too from one of our viewers. Thank you, Kat. Apparently, Donna Sarkar mentioned today about Power Apps being accessible out of the box, at least in the EU. We just got to work hard to keep it that way. So, I guess my 2 cents is watch customizations, things of that nature, right? Don't go too crazy. But thank you for that share. All right. Abdul, any other questions? Anything else that anyone wants to quickly share before we wrap? Going once, going twice. Aside from the cats that are attacking them.
So this is the MBAS cat for anybody that remembers MBAS cat. This is this one, the one that does high fives on command for treats. He's trying to relive his glory days. That's what this is.
That's fantastic. Well, I would say with that, this has been fantastic. Thank you all for your time, for your share, for your knowledge. We appreciate you. The community appreciates you and your efforts. Thank you all for taking time out of your busy schedules to do this for everyone here today. I appreciate it. Again, thank you all. This has been awesome. Well, let's just see if there's any other. No more questions. So yeah, we need people that get some sleep, get some rest, get some food. So thank you all. Have a great night. We appreciate all of our viewers, and we'll see you next time on Come Cloud with Us. Take care, everyone, and thank you. Bye now.
Thanks, everyone.